Hey, my friend, welcome to the podcast. This week I spoke with Laura Valvasori. Laura is a business and wellbeing mentor, and she is the creator of a program called Still Me But Alcohol Free. We spoke about Laura's journey in midlife to becoming alcohol free, how that impacted her, how that changed her health, and how that changed her connections and friendships. After hitting a breaking point with alcohol, she decided to try on going alcohol free in a quest to feel better. And today, over 4 years later, she lives happily alcohol free. And Laura is really passionate about sharing what she's learned to guide other women through the journey of shifting to an alcohol free life if you choose to. We are hearing more and more about the negative effects of alcohol on our physical and emotional, psychological well-being, particularly in perimenopause, menopause, and midlife. So I was really excited to speak with Laura about her journey to becoming alcohol-free and hearing about how it's actually changed her life.
Kia ora. Are you a woman navigating midlife, menopause and beyond? I'm Megan Kerr, your midlife mentor and psychosynthesis counsellor and coach. Join me as we dive deep into the heart of midlife, unravelling the complexities of menopause and exploring uncharted territories that lie beyond. Together, we'll navigate through self-doubt, bid farewell to people-pleasing, conquer imposter syndrome and tame those overwhelming feelings. It's time to celebrate this vibrant second chapter of life, claiming your authentic confidence and courage along the way. Midlife is not a time to settle. It is a time to unleash your purpose, make an impact uniquely your own, all while prioritizing your well-being. So buckle up for conversations that resonate with the essence of your midlife journey. Are you ready? Let's begin.
Well, welcome to the podcast, Laura Valvasori. So glad you're here. Tell us actually where you reside and a little bit about yourself and who you help.
Sure. So I am currently in my office, which is a she shed, formerly was our shed in Ontario, Canada, just outside of Toronto. So my background is that I've had a marketing consulting business for 10 years and am transitioning into offering some more well-being mentorship services. And I've been more recently sharing my story around going alcohol free, which is a decision that I made 4 years ago. Last week actually was my anniversary of 4 years. And I did so for well-being reasons, not because I had an addiction problem. So to take you back, so sort of the sense of what life looked like for me, I grew up drinking as a teenager, like as many people do, into my 20s, getting more into wine. And then I had my kids, and there was the mommy culture of drinking wine together. And we were very social throughout our life, my husband and I. And we also have a boat in Northern Ontario. So we're boaters, and there's a real connection between drinking and boating. So it was a part of a lot of our social interactions. And I was starting to notice some symptoms that I wasn't familiar with. And I was noticing I was getting a lot of heartburn and not sleeping great. And all of these things that I was attributing to perimenopause, but deep down felt like the wine might have actually been part of the problem. And I ignored it because I didn't want to deal with stopping drinking because of all the implications of that. And then I hit a bit of a breaking point when we took a 3-week vacation on our boat. It was just when we were starting to come out of lockdowns for COVID, and we took this big, beautiful, amazing trip, and we had a great trip. But I drank every day because we were on vacation and it was the thing to do. And I wasn't drunk. I was just, having a cooler in the afternoon and wine at dinner. And by the end of the vacation, I felt horrible. And I knew that I had to do something and give it a chance. So I made the decision to take a break for a while. I didn't put a timeline on it. And around that time, as the universe does, I came across Annie Grace's book called This Naked Mind, which was the first book I read, which I always recommend to people. And it helped me understand a lot about why we drink and helped support some of the initial phase of me deciding to stop. And within a couple of weeks of stopping, I was shocked at how much better I was feeling. My indigestion, my heartburn was gone. And from there, it just kept getting better. And the more research I did, the more I learned about alcohol and what it actually is doing. I was shocked. I had no idea what alcohol really was and what does to our bodies, especially as women. And from there, I just decided to sort of keep going for a while, and it became 4 years later. And I've now created a program called Still Me, but alcohol free. And
Right.
support women sort of go through this with the right support and tools that I wish I had at the beginning.
Yeah, amazing. So from your
Yeah.
your experience, you've created a program to support women to experiment with being alcohol free, or are
Yeah.
they
So I
right?
always say that I think part of the challenge is that we never give ourselves a break for long enough to understand how it could help us. And I'd been through what I think many people do, a 30-day challenge, and
Hmm.
I was miserable and cranky the whole time. And I just looked forward to the end of those 30 days so I could have a glass of wine. And it wasn't a pleasant experience. So this time, I also incorporated a lot of mindset study that I'd done. And I was thinking, how do I apply that to this situation? How do I look at it differently? And so I really treated it as an experiment. And that's how I've created the program, to give women a chance to explore their relationship, to understand how it impacts them, understand themselves, because a lot of why we drink is habitual, it's
Hmm.
patterns. We're not even thinking about it. And so it really is sort of a thought, like an experiment for a period of time with the right information and tools and support. And at the end of it, we go through a decision-making process. Where are you going to go from here? So are you going to choose to stay how you were? Because you know what? I was actually fine. Didn't make a big difference for me. And maybe that's what you discover. Or I'm going to moderate, and we talk about the pros and cons of that. Or I'm going to continue to be alcohol free, and we talk about the pros and cons on that. And then you make a commitment to yourself. So it's not about doing this program to 100% quit, and I'm going to judge you if you don't make it to the end. That is
Mm.
not at all what it's about. It is just about giving yourself a chance with the right resources and the right support to see what works for you.
Yeah, I really like that because I think about it, it's kind of you're ramping in so that you have an
Right.
experience of being alcohol free. And very key is important with support because it's still unusual, I think, in our culture anyway, in New Zealand, to
Mhm.
be alcohol free.
Yes, it
And
is
so,
definitely, yeah, it's definitely growing in popularity,
mhm.
but especially if you're the first in your friend group to do this, it can feel very lonely and overwhelming and can be easy to throw in the towel at any time when you start to get challenged.
What was it like for you when you went alcohol free? Were you the first in your friend group?
I was,
Right.
and I remember when I was starting to feel like I needed to quit, I would talk to my best friend, and I said to her, I feel like maybe we should stop drinking for a little while. And she was like, why? Like, I'm good. And I was kind of taken back because, people talk about having an accountability partner and doing a lot of things. And what I realized in that moment was, for her, it wasn't an issue. She wasn't experiencing a lot of the physical symptoms I was. And I needed to make a choice that was right for me. And had I thought, oh, if she's not going to do it with me, I'm not going to do it.
Mm.
Like, it takes courage and really listening. I was listening to another one of your podcasts talking about your inner knowing, like
Yeah.
listening to your own intuition about what feels right for you. So initially, it felt a little bit lonely in that way. I did have an advantage in that we were still in some lockdowns for COVID when I initially quit. So when I was socializing with friends, I'd get together with my group. We were still doing the outside get together thing. We were in that phase.
Oh,
So for the
yeah.
first few months, I would bring a bottle of non-alcoholic wine and I'd have it sitting by me. And many of my friends didn't even know that I'd quit.
Hmm.
So I feel like it helped me ease into it a little bit. And when they did find out that I'd quit, they're like, but wait, no, you've been coming to all these things and you're still socially, like you're still having fun. Like, how could you have quit? Which felt like a big compliment because I
Yeah.
always wanted to continue to have an active social life, to continue to have fun and not make it a thing about feeling deprived.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that train of thought with it. Being alcohol free doesn't necessarily have to impede your capacity to be social and be with your friends. I think
Mhm.
that's a lot of women that I talk to, that is like a barrier for
Huge
them.
barrier.
Yeah.
It's a huge barrier. Our need, especially as women, to have a sense of belonging is
Yes.
really strong. And when everyone else is doing this thing, you want to feel a part of it. So
Mhm.
for me, having good non-alcoholic alternatives helps me continue to feel included. Some people choose not to use alternatives, but I find it really supportive. And I can still enjoy a mocktail or a glass of non-alcoholic wine, and I feel like I'm a part of the social situation.
Okay, so that's something still important to you 4 years
Mhm.
along on your journey?
Yes.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. So that's just sort
Nice.
of become my way of being a part. Like last night, I went out for dinner with a bunch of my girlfriends and I ordered a virgin Caesar. And my Caesar looked exactly like my friend next to me who ordered
Yeah,
an alcoholic Caesar. And I still enjoyed feeling like I was a part of the table. Mine just
yeah.
didn't have alcohol in it.
Going through that journey for yourself, and like you said, you didn't sort of let your friends know on a broader scale
Mhm.
until you were further down the track. Did that in any way challenge your identity, who you are, how you fit in with your community? What happened there for you?
I feel like my friends were all supportive, especially since I said that I was doing it because I was feeling these physical symptoms. It's hard to
Yeah,
argue when someone's saying, I'm not feeling great. Like your friends want you to feel
that's
good.
right.
But it did create some kind of awkward conversations at times, in that when you say that you're not drinking, it often creates a response in someone that they start telling you how little they drink. It makes them reflect on their own drinking. So I never have any intention of trying to push this on someone. I am very happy to share my experience, but I've been very cognizant from the beginning of this being my choice and not trying to push it on other people. But even so, it can make people feel uncomfortable because it makes them reflect on their own choices.
Yeah, yeah, that's right. I went through a phase in my 20s. I had Crohn's disease, really sick with it, and I
Mhm.
just couldn't drink at all. And so I came from quite
Right,
a binge drinking background and culture to
right.
zero alcohol. And that actually meant that I became more separated from my family and
Hmm.
family gatherings. And
Hmm.
it's different now because I think our attitudes have changed. This is like 30
Right,
years down the track.
right,
But then I became the kind of outlier and the
right,
outsider and somebody who
right,
doesn't have fun and all of that kind of stuff.
right.
So for me, that's still sitting in the background when I think about
Yep,
this.
absolutely. Yeah, our experiences, particularly when we're younger, forms a lot of our beliefs about alcohol. So for me, I grew up with parents that were very social and alcohol was a part of everything. And so I subconsciously started to make this connection that alcohol equals fun. And you have a
Yes.
part of alcohol. So that's, where that gets ingrained very young. And then society shows us all of these examples of people having fun in advertisements and TV shows, and it's everywhere. It's just a very part of culture. So it starts to ingrain this belief in your mind. But when you start taking it apart and recognizing that it's a belief and that you can change your belief, you can choose a new belief and start reinforcing that. That's part of the mindset work that I think helps make this change more successful or longer lasting, versus
Mm.
just trying to take something away and willpower and white knuckle your way through an experience. It's about shifting your thinking about your drinking and then giving yourself chances to have experiences and like documenting them and doing things that are going to reinforce in your mind that we still can have fun. So I kept a journal as an example,
Mhm.
and this is something I do with the women in the program. We keep a journal of all the experiences you've had alcohol free. And so I couldn't imagine going to a wedding alcohol free. I just went to a wedding and I had a good time. I couldn't imagine having a date night with my husband without ordering a bottle of wine. And then I did, and it worked and it was fine. So it's like all of these experiences start to
Yeah.
slowly build. And that's part of the shifting of the mindset. And I think that that really has a big shift on how you experience it and the long-term impact.
Yeah, so helping women get more connected to their own personal why. So for you, it was
Exactly.
your physical well-being, and for others, it may be something slightly different, but you
Yeah.
sort of have to know what that's about.
For me, it was a couple of things. So there was the
Mm.
physical symptoms, but there was also this misalignment that I was starting to feel. So I remember when I turned 40 and my girlfriend put together a slideshow of pictures of me over all the years. And I noticed that I had a glass of wine in my hand in almost all the pictures. And then when I turned 43, or was around 43, I remember a friend, we were talking about future careers. And I said, "Oh, I feel like I'll do something in health and wellness." And she said, "Well, you can't do that if you're drinking wine." And it just felt, again, these like little moments.
Mhm.
And then I was starting to notice, like, do all these things to support my health in midlife, yet I was doing something that I knew was working against all the things I'm doing. So I'm going to a
Yeah.
naturopath, I'm taking supplements, I'm doing the workouts, I'm doing the meditation, I'm doing all these things, yet I'm doing something that's countering all of it. So it was just starting to not sit well from a values and an alignment perspective as my life was entering this phase. So it was really
Mm.
the physical piece and this feeling of misalignment for me.
Misalignment. Yeah, that's a really good way to
Yeah.
describe it. And talk to us a little bit about the perimenopause, menopause, and alcohol, because how alcohol
Mhm.
impacts our body, or our body's resilience to alcohol through that phase, definitely changes.
100%. It's something that I noticed and that a
Mm.
lot of people notice. And, some of the more common perimenopause symptoms of hot flashes and sleep disturbances and anxiety, all three of those are impacted by alcohol. So a lot of women experience a reduction in hot flashes when they take alcohol out. There is definitely an impact on sleep, and I've interviewed a sleep expert in the program that talks all about the different ways that alcohol impacts not only your ability to get to sleep, but the
Mm.
quality of sleep and the number of wake ups and the whole overall sleep cycle. The architecture of your sleep changes even when you've had like one glass of alcohol, it can change,
Yeah.
which may sound familiar. And then
Mhm.
anxiety. A lot of women use alcohol as a stress reduction tool. Or they think they've had a bad
Yes.
day and they want to have a glass of wine and relax. And there's the initial feeling of relaxation, but it's actually a depressant on your central nervous system and it amps up your anxiety. So the things that you're using it for are actually causing more problems in a lot of the perimenopause symptoms that we experience. And it also impacts like every system in your body. So your brain health, and your brain's impacted, as we know, through perimenopause. Your digestion and your gut biome gets changed by alcohol. So alcohol is actually a toxin to your body. I didn't know this when I
Mm.
was starting to do my research. It's actually classified, it's made from ethanol, which is the same as gasoline. And when we put it into our body recognizes it as a toxin, and it's like all systems go on deck to try to get this toxin out. So your liver will first try to process the alcohol to get it out of your system, and then it'll process the food you've eaten if you've eaten like a meal with some wine. So it's like your body is constantly in this low level of fighting if you're drinking on a regular basis, that it just dampens and impacts the effectiveness of your body's ability to function optimally overall.
Yeah, absolutely. And when obviously we know when we're in perimenopause, our energy, like our physical vitality, takes a bit
Yes.
of a hit for so many of
Yeah.
us. And then layer on top of that, we're giving our body another job to do
Right.
that is optional, right? And
Right.
I found in perimenopause and early postmenopause, I couldn't even have a glass of wine. Like the first little bit would be nice, and then half an hour
Mhm.
later, I would be exhausted, tired, slightly headachy. And
Yeah.
so I sort of just went, this isn't working for me. Now
Right.
I'm right on the other side. It's okay. Like I can have a glass of
Oh,
wine and I'm fine.
great.
But now, so that's good on one hand, but on the other hand, I think it's, for me anyway, personally, I want to be really clear around, yes, like my body can tolerate it that day and maybe the next day, but in what ways might this be depleting my vitality over the long term?
Mhm.
Yeah. So
And even
that's,
and even if you're drinking moderately, or say
yeah.
you have a glass of wine on a just on the weekend, that alcohol stays in your system for up to 10 days for your body to fully process it out. And so you're impacting systems and your overall level of vitality for days after you've had a drink. So even if you're thinking, well, I don't drink much or often,
Mhm.
that one drink, which is often more than one drink, will have a longer term effect. So you're constantly staying in this cycle, even if you think that you're moderating and have gaps between the drinks that you're having.
Yeah, so I'm thinking, right, so last weekend I did buy a bottle of wine and I had a glass on whatever Saturday night, and then hubby had some. And then this week I have felt a bit more fatigued than normal. And I don't normally drink wine at all.
Hmm.
And just watching those patterns emerge, I think is really important and helpful for us, because there is, like you
I think
said,
so.
we can do all of those things. We can go to the gym and eat right and take supplements and do all the stuff, and
Right.
then we're giving another stress to our body through
Yeah,
alcohol.
it's just so
Yeah.
counterintuitive. And as women, I know we work so hard to try to do whatever we can to have our vitality. And like I was spending thousands of dollars on supplements and naturopath appointments and
Yeah.
feeling like and getting my blood work back and my liver numbers are off. So we're going to supplement your liver. My liver numbers are awesome. I just had blood work done
Yeah.
and my inflammation markers are awesome. And it's just, but I was doing all these things to try to counter what I was doing on the weekend.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
because, we're not saying this to create guilt or anything like that, because it's
No,
so
no.
ingrained in our culture and society. It's such a
Yeah.
normal part of life, but it's really great to have this broader awareness of the role that alcohol plays and the challenges it causes for our system. Yeah. So what do you find are the main barriers women, say someone like me who's like, you know what, I actually do feel a whole lot better without alcohol.
Hmm.
And it's not something that's been a major problem in my life, but I just know that my vitality is better, or emotionally I feel better without
Hmm.
it in the days after. What are the main barriers that prevent women from really going forward like you have and being, say, 4 years or even 6 months or
Hmm.
1 year alcohol free?
So I think that the fear of the fallout with friendships is a
Mm,
huge thing. The impact on the social situation is a big barrier. I think that the fear of failure is another, that a lot of women have tried to moderate in the past, or they've, done 30-day challenges and they're like, oh, here we go again. And am I going to fail? So I'm not even going to bother. Like, I'm not even in because I
mm,
know I'm going to be out. And the third piece is I think that they don't recognize the importance of the whole mindset shift. It's more than just making the decision and not having the drink. And like I said, white knuckling it through this situation. It is how do you change and support yourself with other stress reducing types of modalities that are you're going to be turning to instead of a glass of wine, and how do you change your mindset so you can go to a party and still have a good time. So without like that's a big barrier for people too, is like not thinking through like the whole implication of it. So I think the
mm.
fear of the friends and the social situations and the fear of failure and the not shifting are kind of the things that hold people back from even trying.
Yeah, and I'm thinking like how useful it would be to have that supportive guide if this was something you were
Hmm.
experimenting with, as you do in your course, to give you those
Hmm.
sort of ideas and open that doorway in terms of mindset shift and belief around
Hmm.
self and alcohol,
Yeah.
that we can start to really shift. Yeah.
It can feel overwhelming as well because there are books and podcasts and all kinds of different things. So trying to figure out where to even start. And that's one of the things that I did in the program is I took all these resources. I'm a big researcher and I love information, but like how do we distill it down to something that these are a few podcasts to listen to. These are some great books. Here's some key studies. Here's a bunch of information about all the impacts on your body in different ways. So we covered the mind, we covered the central nervous system, we covered digestion and gut health. I've kind of condensed it down so you're not going all over trying to find all these things, then bring you sort of through a sequence of tools and modalities and exercises to support you as well.
Yeah, because it's about getting a really strong foundation, right? So
Mhm.
to create behavior change, we have to actually shift the foundation underneath it. And then that
100%.
makes, yeah, it makes that behavior change easier.
Mhm.
Easier. I guess
Yeah.
we are talking, just as a bit of a caveat, we're really talking about using alcohol in a general sense. We're not talking about more down that serious end of the spectrum
Yes.
of addiction or very
That's a very
problematic
good thing
use of
to
alcohol.
clarify. That's a very good thing to clarify. I am coming from a place, I am not a mental health or addiction specialist. I'm sharing my experience to help educate others. There are people who need different types of support, and there are lots of supports for people who have an addiction. I find that there was like a bit of a gap when I was reading things or looking at resources that a lot of people were coming at this from a place of addiction and not coming at it from a how do I just want to feel better. So, yes, that's a really good distinction that this is intended for someone who is a habitual casual drinker that is not coming from a place of addiction and looking for some support and community around that.
Yeah, really good to clarify that.
Mhm.
So for women who, and I'm one of them, we've had a really busy day, we're coming home, and you get that kind of little glimmer inside yourself. It's like,
Mm,
I'm going to treat myself to a glass of wine. It's been a long week. How lovely
right.
that will be. What do we replace that with? Eh,
Yeah. So for me, I have found some non-alcoholic wines that I enjoy. They are different. I'm going to caveat that. They're never going to taste like the actual wine, but my palate has adapted to them, and I don't even like the taste of actual wine now if I accidentally take a sip of my husband's. So for me, having either a non-alcoholic beverage or some soda water, something in a fancy glass, gives your brain a bit of the trigger that it's still something that's a treat. And what we're often looking for is not what's in the glass, it's the relaxation and the switch from being in like work mode, life mode to downtime mode.
mm,
So if you can find other practices that do that for you. So like I take a bath often. So that for me has become like the signal at the end of the workday and into the evening and gives me that sense of relaxation that I would have turned to a glass of wine for. So finding things that work for you, either a substitute in your glass or a fancy glass or some other kind of modality that's going to give you what you're actually craving.
yes, nice. I can see how that would be really helpful. Yeah.
Mhm.
And so for someone who is listening to this and like, you know what? Yeah, I've been thinking this for a while. I can feel this emerging in my awareness.
Mhm.
Where do they start? Like through what door is it is it best for them to focus on?
I think that starting to do some self-reflection is the
Yeah.
first place that I would start. And that's something I do with the women in the program is we start by talking about your whys. Like, why do you really want to do this? What is the motivation? And being honest with yourself about how drinking is making you feel, what your fears are. So, really doing some journaling would be a great place to start getting honest with yourself about where you're at and why you want to make this commitment to change.
And for you, did you notice a any shift for yourself emotionally and psychologically through going alcohol free? And if you did, what were they?
Yeah. So, for me, like I said, the heartburn I was experiencing physically went away.
Mm,
I was also having, I used to refer to it with my husband as free floating anxiety. I would just get
yeah.
anxious but not about a specific thing, and that disappeared. And I just felt like I had more clarity, less sort of fog. I just felt clearer and sharper in and as time went on, physically, the most interesting thing on the sales page, I have a picture of it. My eye color changed significantly. So a lot of people talk about the whites of your eyes. If you've been drinking, your whites will be more yellow. I mean, I think the whites got a bit whiter, but for me, my eyes are blue. It's hard to see with my glass right now. My eyes are blue, and they got way more vibrantly blue. So there were physical changes, and there was less inflammation in my face, and my skin looked not as dull. So there were physical changes that over time also started to happen, along with sort of that more mental clarity. And my sleep was way better. I didn't have any idea that I was sleeping so poorly until I started sleeping better. So I was like, oh, everybody wakes up a few times a night and everybody tosses and turns. And then I would sleep right through the night. I was like, oh,
Hang
this
on a
is
minute.
different. Wait a second. So yeah, there was definitely, and then when you have better sleep, you just feel better.
Yeah. And everything goes better, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I need my sleep.
Yes, I know just from having one drink, my sleep is lighter, it's more restless, it's more interrupted. Yeah.
100%. Yes.
And yeah, sleep is such an important foundation. So what haven't we talked about that you would really like to share with the listeners, or you think it's important to impart?
I just think that just reiterating that making it really takes a lot of courage to make this choice. And a lot of women at this time in their life are reevaluating a lot of areas of their life and sometimes getting a bit more bold with what we want, or our identities are shifting. And as you're going through that process, this is an area that I think a lot of people avoid looking at, that can have a really big impact on the quality of your life, not just in the immediacy. Definitely, you're going to feel some changes, but in the long term, like, your vitality is so important. And if this is something you can control at a time when there's so many things that are beyond our control, then it's worth giving yourself the opportunity to experience it.
Thank you. Yeah, I think so. Obviously, I work with women in midlife, and we want that change because that's what's emerging in our body physiologically. There's change coming, and so we want things around us to change, or we know that there's a call for change within us.
Mm-hmm.
And yet sometimes we miss what's so obvious and
Mm-hmm.
right in front of us.
Mm-hmm.
Why do you think that is in terms of alcohol?
I think because it's so ingrained in us,
Yeah,
that we don't even notice. It is so normalized to drink. It is such a part of everything. Toasting to celebrate, a drink at the end of the day to relax. And it's like it's everywhere. So it becomes a part of our subconscious mind that we're not even thinking about drinking. How many times have you just had a drink because that's the thing you do in that situation? Not even asking yourself, do I actually want to drink right now? Like, am I even interested in having a drink? It just becomes so habitual, and we're in autopilot, that I think we don't, it's right, it's so obvious, but we don't think about it because it's been a part of our life. And I like to say, it's like a frenemy. It's been a friend for so many years, and it's been a part of so many things, and I've had so many great fun nights, but it's starting to feel like a toxic relationship, and you're starting to feel like you need to break up, and you hesitate and you don't want to end it, but in the end, you're changing, life's changing, and sometimes it's the right choice, and like you say, it's right in front of you. And if you just give yourself a chance to experience something different and then make a decision.
Yeah, I really love how you've sort of flipped that, experience something different and then make a decision. That to me sounds very, very doable. And you're deciding if you want to break up with that frenemy who has become quite toxic in your life. Laura, thank you so much for sharing your journey with us and your guidance. How can people stay in touch with you? Maybe there might be some people that want to work with you or still learn from you. What's the best way for them to do that?
Sure. So there'll be links below, I believe, to my Instagram and my Facebook. So I'm Laura Valvasori. And you can also link to a webinar, a free webinar that's a 40-minute webinar where I talk about 5 hacks for a happier happy hour alcohol-free. And I talk about some of the things to consider if you're going to a social situation and you want to try to not drink in it to set yourself up for success.
Beautiful. And your program, just remind us what your program is called and how often you run it.
Sure. So the program is called Still Me, but Alcohol Free, and it's available in 2 formats. So there's a self-guided version that you can start anytime, and that's available for purchase on demand. And then I run the program a few times a year. The next group program starts September 23rd. So it runs for 6 weeks. And in the first couple of weeks, we sort of do some intro and prep and learning. And then we have an experience of 4 weeks alcohol free. And then you make the decision. So that format includes all of the online learning modules that I've created. And there's a ton of information there, plus a weekly call with the community and access to an app that we can all chat and answer questions and share in real time.
Thank you so much for joining us today, Laura.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks for joining me on the podcast. Really appreciate you. Check out my course where we just go so much deeper than I can ever do on a podcast over an 8-week period. The Midlife Upgrade course is a blend of video and learning modules and weekly live calls where you will discover a roadmap for psychological freedom in midlife. Check out all the details on my website. I really would love to have you join the course, megancare.co.nz/course.